Om Namah Shivaya. Today I want to talk about something that is pretty common among meditators, or at least fairly long-term meditators, but you don't hear much about it, and that is movements in meditation. So I don't know if this has happened to you, but it happens to many meditators at some point. And it can be just gentle movements like swaying back and forth, spontaneous. You're meditating and you're having this gentle swaying back and forth. Then it can be maybe more dramatic. Your head might start rolling around. You might be making face grimaces or your eyes twitch. Any number of things can happen. Your arms may start to move. You might seem to be almost dancing or doing some kind of martial arts. Seriously, this can happen in meditation quite spontaneously. And often it happens on long retreats of, when I say long, I mean weeks or months, where you're doing a lot of meditation every day. And that is the most common scenario for this to happen. And then after the retreat, it might continue. And it might continue for quite some time. So what is going on here? Okay, well, first of all, just to be clear, I'm talking about movements in meditation while you're actually meditating. If you're having these kind of movements outside of meditation, then you probably better see your doctor to make sure nothing is wrong. Because this is very specific to meditation. Okay, so if this happens in meditation, what is happening is that the Shakti, the subtle energy, the prana, is activated through the deep meditation. And this Shakti, this prana, begins to flow through subtle channels called nadis. And if there are obstructions in the nadis, then it's kind of like turning on a hose when there's a kink in the hose. You know, the hose might flop around a little bit as the water tries to move through that kink, right? So that is essentially what's happening here. The Shakti, the prana, is awakening. It's flowing through this system of nadis, and there's said to be 72,000 nadis, so there's lots of them. And all of us have nadis that are obstructed, that are blocked, clogged. And in fact, this is one of the main things that happens in your career of meditation, is that gradually you're clearing these obstructions from the nadis and clearing the chakras and opening the chakras. It's all in that same system. So this is a very natural thing that happens. Now, what should be our attitude towards these movements? This is very important. The best attitude is neutrality. They're happening. We don't care if they're happening. We don't try to force against them. We definitely don't encourage them. If we have even the slightest idea that these movements are something good, that, oh boy, this means my Kundalini Shakti is awakened, and this is great. And as soon as you think that, these movements are going to get wilder and wilder, and they'll definitely persist longer than they need to. So an attitude of neutrality, you don't care about them. Actually, even better yet, slightly a preference not to have the movements. Because eventually what happens is that kink gets undone. The obstruction is cleared. And then the movements are no longer necessary that way. So they'll naturally subside. And this might take days of regular meditation. It might take weeks, months. It can even take years. Not many years, but maybe a year or two. So this often happens to people. But if you have the idea that this is a good thing, then it can persist for much longer than it needs to. So you want to have the idea that, if anything, they're unnecessary. but you don't want to force against them, because those movements are actually facilitating in some way the movement of the prana through those nadis. Okay, just like the hose flopping back and forth, it facilitates the water moving through that hose. But at some point, the water's flowing freely through the hose, and then there's no need to take the hose and move it back and forth. That's not going to help. The water is already flowing through it. So at that point, the movements are no longer necessary. And so what happens is, as these nadis get cleared and the Shakti, prana, begins to penetrate throughout your entire energetic body, throughout the entire pranamaya kosha. That's the layer of your being, the energetic body, you could say. Once that happens, then all the nadis get filled with energy. And that corresponds with a state of awareness that is completely whole. Just this wholeness of awareness that is unbounded and absolutely peaceful and still and profound awareness. So that is what we're going for. See, there's a correlation between what's happening on the energetic body and what we experience on the level of the mind/awareness, consciousness. So when the prana has penetrated all the nadis and penetrated the whole system and is completely full and harmonious, then awareness is completely full. So that is the end goal. And even before that total state of fullness is reached, if we have the attitude of a preference for stillness, then what happens is, as we favor the state of stillness in meditation, then that as if forces the subtle prana to find ever more subtle passages and clear the nadis that haven't yet been reached by the prana. So as it allows that prana to penetrate even deeper into the system, so that stillness actually then facilitates the clearing of the subtlest nadis. Whereas if we encourage the movements beyond the point where they're necessary, then it's like a kind of stale, habitual thing, and it's not really facilitating anything, and it's kind of keeping us occupied on a grosser level when we could be still and allowing the prana to penetrate into more subtle aspects of the nadis. So that is going to relate to even higher states of consciousness. So it's all this beautiful, wonderful system, and all we need to know is, yes, if you're having movements, it's natural. Have a neutral attitude towards them, don't mind them, and if you ever feel like they're getting too intense, you can always just open your eyes, and if you open your eyes, they'll subside. And then you go back into meditation and favor that idea that stillness is actually preferable, and see what happens from there. And then if the movements start up and they're irresistible, so be it. Just ignore them. Let them be, whatever they are. And then when we can, they'll subside, and there will be stillness and a greater wholeness of awareness.